I still remember when that man asked me if I was a fan. I'm about to tell you one of the most embarrassing things that's ever happened to me in my life, okay? So pay attention. I was a freshman in high school. And if you know a little bit about me, I like basketball a little bit. And I'm a Miami Heat fan, all right? So don't boo me. Don't boo me, I said, all right? I was born in Miami, so I've got a little excuse. But when I was a freshman in high school, my dad took me to a Heat Pacers game, all right? So like the highlight of, a little boy who's a fan of watching this team, right? I was ready to go, and this was the very first time that I got to go and I got to sit close. See, growing up, if I were to go to a Pacers game, I was sitting up top, right, in like the $5 seats or something like that. Well, this time, my dad was like, because this is my team, he got me seats in the lower level. So we're in the lower level, and it was in the middle of the first quarter. This guy wearing a polo comes up to me and says, "Hey, are you a Heat fan?" And I'm like, "Do you see the jersey I have on?" Right? Like I'm the only person in this entire arena, I believe, that was rooting for the Heat. Now if this means anything to you, this is a long time ago as a freshman in high school. The Heat weren't any good back then, okay? Now they're amazing. But like back then, they weren't any good. This was pre-LeBron Wade area, if that means anything to you, okay? But he asked me if I'm a Heat fan. I say, of course I am. Like, see my jersey? So he says, "Do you want to come on the court and do an activity with us during a timeout?" So I look at my dad, and he's like, "Sure, okay, right?" And so I go with this man. He takes me over to the tunnel, right? And he explains to me what's about to happen. So here's what happens. During a timeout, me and Boomer, right? Everybody knows Boomer, the Pacers mascot, and another Pacers fan, we all walk out on the court. We're going to have this little competition, right? So he explains the rules to us and says, "Here's what we're going to do. We're going to blindfold you." Right then, I should have said, "No, thank you," okay? But I said, "Okay, sounds great," right? We're going to blindfold you. And what we're going to do is we're going to go out to center court. Boomer and his little helper are going to be out there, and they brought some other, some guys to help, and they had this jump rope, okay? And they said, "We're going to blindfold you, and we're going to have the jump rope out there, and every time that we go around, we're going to clap. And as soon as you hear the clap, you jump." Okay, so it's pretty simple. And so they're going to see how many we could do. So the Pacer fan goes out there, and everybody cheers for him, right? And he puts a blindfold on, and they clap, and he jumps, and does it a couple times, like 9 or 10 times. I'm like, I can beat that, right? Like, that's not that hard. So everybody claps for him. They say, "Okay." Now they say, "This is Matt, and I'm wearing a Heat jersey." And so everybody in this whole place starts booing me, all right? I'm 15 years old, and I've got like 15,000 people booing at me. And so I'm like, okay, that's fine. But I'm pretty sure I can beat like 10 jumps. Like, it's not that hard. It's a big jump rope. And so I get the blindfold on, and Boomer and his guy are there, and they're doing this thing, and I hear the clap, and I jump. And then I keep going. And I get like 16, 17, 18. I clearly have beaten the Pacer guy. But what I've noticed in this moment is that nobody's clapping for me. They're laughing at me. And I'm like, why is everybody laughing? So after a while, I think I get up to like 30 jumps. I'm actually getting tired at this point, okay? And they say, okay, that's enough. Take your blindfold off. You guys see where this is going? I take my blindfold off. I'm the only person in the middle of the court. Boomer's left. The jump rope's not there. I'm in the middle of the court just jumping up and down. Every time they clap, I look like an idiot, right? Oh my goodness, it was the most embarrassing thing that's happened to me, especially as a 15-year-old. Here's what I felt. This is a true story. I felt abandoned. I felt alone in that moment. And listen, where was my dad in all of this, right? Like, he's watching me. I don't know. Have you ever felt like that in your life? Maybe not like that specifically, but maybe your mom left you at Walmart or something like that. Like, have you ever felt abandoned? Have you felt alone? Have you felt like someone has forgotten you? That's how I felt in that moment. Have you ever felt that way in your relationship with God? Have you ever felt like you were just all by yourself? That nobody's looking out for you, or that, even worse, I don't feel God anywhere around me? I think if we were honest, I think all of us have probably asked this question before. When you are hurting, why does God feel far away? It's a real question. And I've felt that way. I can almost guarantee that every one of your small group leaders has felt this way as well. That when you are hurting, when something is going wrong in your life, why does God feel like he is far away? Because there are times in life that he feels like that. It feels like he's not there. It feels like he doesn't care. And this is an important question. Maybe you've wondered why God hasn't fixed something in your life. Maybe you've wondered why it feels like he doesn't care. Or you wonder if he is even paying attention to the things that are going on in your life. Maybe you felt like he's abandoned you. This topic matters because all of us are going to have these type of feelings at times. All of us, as you walk throughout your faith, are going to have moments where you feel like God is far away. But you know what's interesting about this? This is not a new topic. This is not a new feeling. This has been around for a long time. In fact, some of the people that we would say have been closest to God have felt this. One of the first ones that comes to my mind is David. David is a man that the Bible describes as someone who is after God's own heart, right? Someone who is pursuing God with all he has. We know that if you read throughout 1 and 2 Samuel, you'll notice this in David's life. Oftentimes, the scripture tells us that the Lord was with David. And you see that over and over, and you have to wonder, why is that? But regardless, what's interesting about David's life is over and over, he has this unique connection with God, where he was blessed, where he was successful because of his closeness with God. He would go to God with questions. He would inquire of God, God, should I do this? Should the army go do this? And God would interact with David. It's a fascinating relationship. Ultimately, God provided guidance for him for battles, inquiries, and even protection. David was very close with God. And yet, one of the things that we find is even though David was that close with God, these are the words that he writes. Look at Psalm 22. David says this, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me, so far from my cries of anguish? My God, I cry out by day, but you do not answer. By night, but I find no rest. David, even in the midst of his closeness with God, had these moments where he was hurting, where he felt abandoned. He felt alone. And that's how he felt. That's how he felt. So the question I have for you is, have you ever felt that before? It's not that you don't believe that God's not real or that you don't believe in God, but just because of your belief in God, you have to start wondering, because of the circumstances of your life, why does he feel far away? Why does it feel like he's not paying attention? Why do I feel those things? The most interesting thing about this is that David's not the only person to express this. In fact, as you look throughout scriptures, if you were to move about 1,000 years forward, as we walk down the timeline of scripture, you find this also expressed in someone that maybe you wouldn't ever think would express this. In fact, you probably know the story of Jesus. Jesus was betrayed by one of his closest friends, right? And he was handed over to be arrested and then to ultimately be convicted and to carry a cross up a hill for his own execution. And as this happened, Jesus, when he is on the cross, as he's been crucified, the nails are in his hands and in his feet, and he's up there, Jesus Christ, the Son of God, God in the flesh, says this, Matthew chapter 27. Those who passed by hurled insults at him, shaking their heads and saying, you who are going to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself. Come down from the cross if you are the Son of God. In the same way, the chief priests and the teachers of the law and the elders, those are all the religious people, they mocked him. He saved others, they said, but he can't save himself. He's the King of Israel. Let him come down now from the cross, and we will believe him. He trusts in God. Let God rescue him now if he wants him. For he said, I am the Son of God. In the same way, the rebels who were crucified with him on his left and his right also heaped insults on him. From noon until 3 p.m, darkness covered over all the land. About 3 p.m, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? Now, if you've been to a couple Easter services, you've probably heard that story before. Jesus on the cross, people mocking him, insulting him, and even in his deep anguish, Jesus felt abandoned. In fact, that's the word forsaken, is what it means in the original Greek language. It means to be left behind, forgotten, or deserted. Now, I want you to think about this. Jesus, in the ultimate moment of pain and suffering, because he was bearing the sins of the world, right? In this moment, he felt far from God. He felt forsaken. He felt abandoned. He felt left behind. He felt deserted while he hung on the cross. Now, of all people, would you think that Jesus would have had those feelings? I mean, listen, he was the Son of God, right? He was God in the flesh. But those were the things that he said. Was he wrong? Was God far? Was he forsaken? We know that God wasn't far. We know he was right there. We know that God's fingerprints were all over this story. But what I really want you to see tonight is this truth. It is not wrong to have those feelings. Everybody hear me? This is what I need you to understand tonight. It is not wrong to have those feelings. If you have those moments in your life where you feel, why does God feel far away? Why does he feel distant? Am I all alone in this? Recognize that one of the people in the Old Testament that was closest to God, in fact, started the line of David that would lead all the way to Jesus, felt that, and Jesus Christ, the own Son of God, as he was on the cross, felt forsaken. It is not wrong to have those feelings, but here's where we get in trouble. Many people can take the feelings of abandonment or being forsaken or being left behind or that God is far away and determine that because we feel that, it must be true. Because I feel that God is far away, because I feel that he's not paying attention, because I feel like he doesn't care what I'm going through, then it must be true. And that doesn't have to be how this all plays out. I want to tell you a story because there's some of you in here that might know this story, but I think that there's a lot of you that probably don't know this story. Some of you might remember a man named Dean Johnson. Dean was a really great friend of mine, and he served here in our high school ministry for a long time, even before I came on staff. He was a small group leader. He also served at Move, and he went to Camp Allendale. He served at Bibleopolis. He was like the ultimate church volunteer, right? He was great. He was fantastic. And he was the best leader. You think of your small group leader, if you think that they're the best, so was Dean. Dean was the best. He cared about his group. He loved his group. He took his group on trips and events, and he prayed for them, and he sent them notes. He did all the things that you would want in a leader. And Dean was a great friend, and he would care for you a lot. But when Dean's group were seniors, something really unfortunate happened because he had walked with them from the time they were freshmen all the way until their senior year. Near the beginning of their senior year, something really unfortunate happened because as he was preparing to lead his small group right here in the SMC, which he had done for years and years and years, as he was preparing for his small group and his guys were here, Dean suffered a heart attack. And as his group was with him in this space, he collapsed. And I was across the street leading my group, and I kept getting phone calls, and as a good small group leader would, I'd ignore them, right, because I was leading my group. But then finally, I was like, seems to be urgent. I answered the call, and they told me that Dean had collapsed, and so I came over here. And as I came over here, there's ambulances out front. I walk in these doors. They're doing chest compressions on Dean. And so I rushed over here, and they put him in the ambulance, and they took him away. And in a moment of maybe leadership failure, I told that small group, I said, everybody, you guys just need to go home. And that was the wrong decision. And luckily, those guys, because they were seniors, said, no, Matt, we're not listening to you, right? They said, we're staying here. We're staying together in this. And I said, okay. So we brought him over to the conference room in there, and we all huddled up, and we started praying and everything like that. And within an hour, we got the phone call that Dean had passed away. And it was heartbreaking. It was traumatizing, honestly, for those of us who were involved in this situation. I can remember this night because after we delivered that news and we cried and we prayed and moms and dads were here. Eventually, everybody left and they went home, and I went back in my office and I just remember just crying. And the things that I felt in that moment were not things that I believe. I felt that God was very far. I felt, why would this happen? Or if this was going to happen, why did it have to happen here? Why did it have to happen right now? Why did it have to happen in front of our eyes? God felt very far in that moment. But I knew that he wasn't. I knew that he was here. I knew that he was in the midst of all of this, and I knew that he was working. But in that moment, I felt alone, and I felt like, why would a good God allow this to happen? And just like when David expressed it, and when Jesus expressed it, it is a real feeling. It is a real feeling to feel that God is far away and not involved in what is happening. But the reality is that he is here. That is what I believe. And so what has to happen in these type of moments in your life, maybe not has to be as traumatic as that or on the cross, but in moments where you feel like, man, God, where are you? Why do you feel far? Why are you not intervening? Why are you not doing anything? In those moments, the best thing that you can do is to process your feelings in a healthy way. And this is really what I want to get to tonight and land on this, because this is important. Today, you'll see Dean's legacy all around us. Every year, we do, this is why I wear this shirt tonight. It has his name on it, Dean Johnson. Every year, we do this golf outing that raises money for some of you to go to Move or to Mix or to Camp Allendale. For some of you that need some financial assistance, we do that in Dean's name. And so people come together and they give money, and we give that money away in Dean's honor because he cared about these things. Pool table over here. I don't know if you've ever noticed that. That used to be in Dean's garage. It's got his name on it. So his legacy is all around us. But what I want to do is to give you something very practical for a minute. When you feel like God is far away, when you feel like he is distant, how do you process all of this in a healthy way to lead you back to what you believe is true and not just what you feel? So here are 6 things. I'm going to do this very quickly. And they're going to pop up on the screen one by one. And so at the very end, maybe you could take a picture, or if you open up the Bible app, you can just grab the picture on there and you can have it and you can remember it. Or you could take notes however you want. But here's what they are. The first thing is this, is to take a minute. And all I mean by that is to collect yourself, to find a place where you can be silent and just to listen. Sometimes when we feel abandoned and feel distant from God, we can feel unrational things, and we can feel, and we just make these decisions and we make these assumptions. You just need to calm down. And just take a minute whenever you feel those things and just try to relax. The second thing is this, is to breathe. And I don't know if you've ever done this, but I've been doing this prayer, like a active prayer walk thing that I do. No, that's not a good way to explain it. But I go on a walk and I listen, and one of the things I do every time that leads me through is to breathe. And that sounds stupid because we all breathe, we know how to breathe, right? But if you were just to take a moment and to tell yourself to inhale, and tell yourself to exhale. Maybe if you remember when you've done like Selah, on the Selah times, it tells you breathe in and breathe out. Sometimes the best thing that you can do is just to listen to your breaths. Just calm yourself in that moment. The third one is to move. Remove yourself from wherever you are, from the distractions around you. Go take a walk, be outside, whatever it is. Just to move yourself away from wherever you have felt that, and to move and to get your mind to remove yourself from the distractions around you. The last 3 are really where I want you to focus on. And this one is going to be unappealing to many of you, but it's to journal, okay? And so I know for guys, right, like journaling, you're like, no thanks, okay? Girls, maybe some of you like to do that. I've never been a huge journaling person, but here's what I would tell you. If you were to do this, I'm not saying you got to do it every night or anything like that. If you were to journal, and what I mean by that is to write down your feelings. Write them down as either in a letter to God or just to write them down. It will help you process what you are thinking and what you are feeling correctly. So write those things down. Again, just try to do that once so you can put it all in a place. The fifth one is to go to friends. And the only reason I put this on here is to help you to remember that you don't have to hurt alone. If you feel alone, you feel abandoned, you feel distant from God, don't walk through that moment by yourself. Go to one of your friends who are also believers and express those things and talk about them. That's what it looks like to be a part of a community, part of a church. And the last one, which maybe should be the first one, is to go to God. To read, to pray, to worship. Ultimately, the feeling of abandonment processed right should lead us back to worship. Think about this. If we were to look at Psalm 42, which is a psalm that's attributed to people that are called the sons of Korah, which have a very unique history in the nation of Israel. They've been involved in a lot of different things. But they get about 9 or 10 different psalms that are in our Bible. And this is one of them. Psalm 42, verses 9 through 11 says this. I say to God, my rock, why have you forgotten me? Why must I go about mourning, oppressed by the enemy? My bones suffer mortal agony as my foes taunt me, saying to me all day long, where is your God? Why, my soul, are you downcast? Why so disturbed within me? Put your hope in God, for I will yet praise him, my Savior and my God. You see, even in the darkest times and the feelings of distance with God, we put our hope in him. So let me answer the question for you. Our question was, why does God feel far away? Maybe you don't feel like I've given you answers to that. Here's the answer. Because Satan uses circumstances in your life to help cloud your feelings about God. That's the answer. Why does God feel far away? Because Satan can use circumstances in your life to cloud your feelings about God. That's the answer, but that is not the solution. You don't want to walk out of here just knowing that. You need to walk out of here knowing what the solution. The only way to move forward is to process these feelings in the right way, to calm down and to move forward rationally. This is important because you are going to ask this question. You are going to wonder in times in your life, why does God feel far away? David Crowder, who is a musician and worship leader, he wrote a song a long time ago, probably before any of you guys were listening to David Crowder. It's called Obsession. And one of the lines in this song says this. He says, sometimes you are further than the moon, sometimes you're closer than my skin. I wonder if that would characterize what it looks like sometimes with your relationship with God. Sometimes God feels as far away as you can imagine. And I bet you've been in moments in your life where he has felt closer than you could ever imagine. This is the reality of what it looks like to walk with God, to walk with Christ. That there are ups and there are downs, there are valleys, and there are peaks. When we find ourselves in the lowest of places, we should put our hope in him and our praise in him because there's nowhere else to turn. Here's what I need you to walk away with. When you are hurting, remember that God is still with you. He hasn't left. He isn't far. And I know that is not a complicated statement, and maybe you believe that already walking in here, but here's what I know. There are moments in our life where what we believe and what we feel are different. And we have to always act on what we believe. When you're able to do this, you're going to withstand the worst of things that can happen in your life. God may feel far, but he's always right here with us.